We're now getting the chassis ready for a light respray before we unite the body that we've been working on back onto this. Just taking the tyres off now so we can get in there and get in there with the spray gun. And we're finding a few of these nuts are pretty tight. So we've been using the impact wrench and it's not really working, probably because the battery's low on it, to be honest. So we're going to try an old trick, an old hack here, and this is to use the ground to our advantage. So we've got a pry bar, an extension bar, sorry, on here, breaker bar. We've got the socket on, and now what we're going to do is we're going to turn the wheel really rapidly towards the rear, and this will undo the nut. So here we go, let's have a look. There we go, nut undone. So there's a little hack for you. We'll try 2 more of these. They're pretty tight as well, so we'll just get that one out. Okay, and again. There we are, it's on the wheel, and we'll hit it on the ground. Goodness, we're full of the top tips today. So here we go, there's another one. When you get these rolls of absorbent paper, it's always a pain to try and keep unwinding them. So why not take the middle out, the cardboard, grab hold of it, and then when you pull, it turns into a handy dispenser. So here we are in the inner sanctum of the Farg motor pool, and what we're doing today is we need to give a chassis a coat of paint. So we're not looking at fine automotive finishing here. This is really basic. Let's just get it into black. So to start off, because of the facilities we've got here, I always use cellulose. That's sometimes described as 1 pack, and then you get 2 pack, which needs a hardener and then a thinner as well. But we're not doing that because that needs protective equipment. I can get away with spraying the 1 pack here in a well ventilated area to make sure my eyes are covered, because you can ingest the paint through your eyes, and a good 3M mask will suffice for this. So what we're going to do now is we're going to mix the paint up, and I'm just going to show you very, very quickly how to just spray a chassis. To do that, we need to look at how we're going to apply it. So firstly, as I said, we've got cellulose paint. I'm just shaking that here, getting it mixed up. Be great if it was a little bit warmer, that'd really help. And we need to stir this like mad before we use it, because sometimes some of the pigments can sink to the bottom of the can. So we've 2 choices on how we're going to apply it. Well, there's a myriad of choices. In fact, we could put it on with a brush, put it on with a roller, but we're going to go with the tried and tested spray gun. So we have this one here, which is a gravity fed, and how this works is the paint is placed in here and it's mixed already, and it goes into this hopper, and here we have the spray of paint coming out, and we simply have a trigger. So by pulling the trigger, the paint will come out in a fan. The way that you adjust this here at the end, this means that we're going to have a vertical fan, and then if you turn it across like this, then obviously we're going to have a horizontal fan. We're working on a chassis, so we're probably going to go with vertical, simply because it's easier to work left and right with that. So that's the difference between this direction or that, and you can just tighten this up. We won't go into these other elements here at the moment. We can always do that on another video, but just suffice to say, one is controlling the width of the fan and the other one's about the amount of paint that's being mixed with the air. At the bottom here we've actually got the air feed as well, because we don't want too much air coming through, but it's quite a delicate balancing act. We want to run the compressor at about 40. Coming through here is only going to be about 10 maybe, so we really want to dial it down, and we don't want to overdo it and get a lot of paint in the atmosphere. So this is our hopper gravity fed. We have another one here, and this uses pressure. So what happens is the paint is in the bottom, the air goes in and forces the paint up through this pipe, that then gets into the nozzle, and off we go again. Very, very similar. We've got a fan here, which is about the width of the fan, which is the way the paint's going on, and at the back we have the amount of paint that we want to let through, and on the bottom is the amount of pressure of air we want to let in. So here's another version. What's the difference between the two? I would suggest that this is more rudimentary. This is like an old school version. Also, it carries an enormous amount of paint, and it really does help when you're actually doing movements such as this, because the paint stays in the can below. So great for doing underneath and horizontal. With this one, which is a more of a modern design, we'll call it, the paint sat in the top, so there's a continuous feed. But the problem is with that, as soon as you start going to this sort of angle, you're starting to get paint coming out around the top, and of course at this angle. So between the two, the chassis we're doing, there isn't large amounts, so we're actually going to go with a Diddy, little one here. Not much goes in there, and this is just going to really help us to detail, so that means we can get in and around all those different cracks and crevices. So how we actually spray will be another video, don't worry, but at the moment we're just setting it up for a very basic chassis spray. So here we have the paint. It's nothing special, it's a cellulose chassis paint. We really want to shake it and stir it until our arms are falling out of our sockets, and we're going to mix it with an anti-bloom thinner. So there's two types of thinners. Well, in fact, there's probably a myriad of different thinners we can use, but two when we're looking at the cellulose. One is going to be called what would be described as gun wash. Gun wash is a very aggressive thinner, and that's really used for cleaning our items when we've finished. Because we're doing cellulose work and we want to get it as best as we can, we're using an anti-bloom thinners, which are in here. You can buy those in different volumes. We tend to buy in the 25 litre, simply because it drives the cost down. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the chassis thinners. We're going to put it as a 50-50 mix. Many people will be sucking in air at this moment in time, going, oh my goodness, it should be a 60-40 or whatever. Due to the ambience, the temperature that we've got, the nature of what we're spraying, we're just going to do a straight 50-50. Dead simple then. 50% cellulose paint, 50% thinners, mix it together, we'll get it in the gun, and let's start spraying. So here we have our cellulose paint. We're just taking the clips off the top of the can so we can get into it. I'm quite interested in this one. It has been sat around for a while, not a great thing to do. I've always found that if you want to paint, especially with cellulose, you want to paint it more or less as it's been mixed. As soon as you're purchasing it, you get it straight back, you get it mixed, you get it onto the vehicle. Leaving stuff around on a shelf, not great. It's going to settle. Paints are made out of different elements, and they mix that for you, and so therefore I've always found that a yellow tends to settle while the blue goes to the top. So therefore, if you don't mix it thoroughly, when you start painting, the paint that you're taking out from the top of the can is going to be darker in colour, and when you get towards the bottom, it's starting to see that yellow coming out. The reason I'm talking about those particular colours, because nearly everything we spray is a khaki green, so therefore there is yellow in it. So we really want to stir that up, and if stuff's been sat around on the shelf, just give it a great shake. Let's open it and see what's inside. Okay, it is a gluttonous mass. I'm going to be really interested to see if this will work. Not great to show you on the program here, but you can see it's actually quite glutinous. We're going to put it into our thinners, we're going to mix it up, and I'm going to do a small test area, so where I will actually use a brush, paint it onto a piece of metal and see what its coverage is like. I want to start to whip up that paint. There we go, that's better. Becoming a little bit more fluid now, mixing all the chemicals together. Now I would say that it is quite a dangerous thing to be mixing paint, especially if you're not wearing a respirator. There is an enormous amount of chemicals being kicked off by this, which can affect your judgment, shall we say, and obviously can have a negative impact on your lungs. So you really want to make sure that you are mixing this in a well ventilated area. So I'm going to add that now over here, and we're dropping in, we've got half a litre of thinners, in fact it's about 60, and we're putting in about 40 on top of it. Let's get in there. There we go, that's quite a lot. In more equipped garages, you may have paint shakers. Some people even heat their paint up first, so they have like a water bath and they heat that paint to get it thinner. In here, it's a chassis. We need to just get it sprayed. Let's just get on with it. So therefore, we've now got the paint in with the thinners. I'm just going to need to mix that thoroughly. not worth watching this. It's quite literally like watching paint dry. We need to use air from our compressor, which is going to propel that paint onto the surface. The surface is prepared, so it's keyed up and it's clean, it's ready for us to go. But we need to make sure that the air that we're getting through to the gun to pick up that paint is going to create an efficient aerosol. The two things that are going to ruin it is, one is water and number two is oil. Compressors by their nature have oil in them, so we want to make sure we're using one of these, and this is an oil catcher. What that's going to do is that's going to take the oil out of the air and condense it and get rid of it. We also need to take the water out, okay? So we have a water condenser here as well, and what that will do is that will again coalesce that water and get it out of the airline. Sometimes, especially in weather like this, it's been very damp in the UK, just having two of them don't work, so we're going to put on a third, a fourth and a fifth. So we're going to end up with 5 elements trying to get the water and the oil out of that air. We've managed to get the water out of the compressor, releasing the bottom valve, getting as much water out as we can. We've got air filters in there, we've got oil filters in there. We've got the very best we can with our facilities. I've mixed the paint as well. One might say, how do you know if the paint's ready? The way of thinking about it is, it has to be quite thin. I would describe it as one step up from tea. You really don't want it thick, maybe like Coca-Cola even. So what you're really looking for is when you're dripping it off of the end of your stirrer, you can really see how that's running away. You want it to be just a little bit thicker than water in a sense. And that's what we're going to be putting into the gun. As soon as we start using the gun, if it's coming out and it's not in an even spread, then we know we're too thick. We'll put a bit more thinners in it and go back to the drawing table. I've put in, as I said, around 50-50. I'm going to change that now. I'm now going to add some more in, take it down to 60-40, just because that paint looked quite thick when we took it out of the tin. We've painted it, we've done what work we need to do on it when it's in this position. We're just at the moment putting in refurbished rubbers for the body to sit on it. So in this video what we're going to try and do is put the body back on the chassis. We're going to do 180, look at the body. And here we are. So there's been quite a few hours of welding gone into this, and you can basically see one of the earlier video in which we're poking holes through this with a screwdriver. It's now all been patched. So this is the first part of the patching, which is the underneath. We're now going to flip it over, attach it to the body, and there's further welding to do. So the body's in good shape, the chassis is in good shape. We did all the mechanics previously on it, so we know it drives really well and it stops great. So when we put it back together, it's a matter of assembly, preparation for painting, and then we'll finish off with some electrics just to check there's no gremlins in the work. To lift this up, it's quite heavy. There are a number of us here today, we couldn't do that, so we are going to be using our faithful JCB telehandler. That's going to enable us to lift it up, and we'll turn it over and put it back on the chassis.
do, isn't it? What have I said? I must put that down. I am swore. Just said it's got to find
I apologise.
It's found the hole.
There we have it. The body has now gone back on the chassis of the P4. We've done further welding on the inside of the body, and our next move is to take that vehicle back, flatten it back into primer, and then on with the top coat, and then release off, and we'll do a review of the vehicle at that point. We have to pause slightly with those vlogs of that restoration, as we've got other pressing matters at hand, and that is the show season here in the UK. Number one, we've been invited back to Bovington to the Tank Fest 2024, so we'll look forward to possibly seeing you there, and we'll be taking our AMX 13105. So our next video will be looking at servicing that and doing maintenance on it, ready for the show season. We will be at other shows and taking our ERC 90, so we have to do some fettling on that before that attends as well. So thanks very much for joining us. The vlogs on the restoration of the Peugeot may go quiet for a short while we're focusing on the show season here in the UK. So ta-ta for now, and I'll see you soon.